We are back once again for another match preview. This time it's a Friday night fixture, Wrexham versus Coventry. Coventry retain their unbeaten start to the league with a 3-1 victory over Watford, which keeps them top of the table, and what a start it's been. Whilst a fantastic result, we needed our forwards on top form and an unbelievable display from Carl Rushworth to stay in the game against a solid 10-man Watford. The game was back and forth and the stats certainly don't suggest a 3-1 scoreline. It could certainly have swayed out of our favour. The question is, can Coventry keep their run going with the decline in performance? Wrexham meanwhile have had a run of tougher fixtures with mixed results, leaving them in 16th position. However, a closer look at some of those results and they've picked up good points against tough opposition. Leicester, Birmingham and Borough is not to be sniffed at, and within those games they've been competitive throughout. As a team they'll want more however, having splashed a lot of cash in the summer with a higher net spend than Chelsea, AC Milan and Barcelona. The team certainly has experience and individual talent to be a high performing team. Wrexham and Coventry haven't faced each other too many times in recent history, with their last meeting in 2023 with a rather hectic 4-3 win for Wrexham. Both teams have come a long way since then, so let's take a look at those expected lineups. Coventry last out reverted back to the 4-2-3-1 with Jamie Allen coming in. The team got the job done with an impressive forward display, however struggled to get a hold of the game in midfield. Looking ahead to Wrexham, Milan will have a one-match suspension, so we're expecting Kane Kessler-Hayden to come in, and whilst Torp is likely back to fitness, we may see him being rested with a fiery fixture versus Sheffield United on the horizon. Lampard always has the option to revert back to that 3-4-3 system if needed. Wrexham, well, they play a consistent 3-5-2 and last out had Moore and Windass leading the line, and they're starting to be a more consistent front two for them. Notable absences include the familiar faces Ben Chief and Callum Doyle. Ben Chief with his notorious groin injury, however he did return to the bench during the midweek cup game versus Cardiff, however unlikely to get that start versus Coventry. Callum Doyle is facing a suspension following his red card. Not much information on this, however it is expected to carry over for the Coventry match. As a whole, Wrexham have faced a few injuries so far this season, with some players unavailable for selection or just coming back into fitness and maybe struggling with that match sharpness. Now, into baseline numbers. Defensively, Wrexham sit deeper than Coventry with their back three system. Offensively, they again sit deeper, with the front line being driven forward by Moore and Windass. Average position-wise, we can see the split back three covering width either side, allowing the wing-backs to roam forward on the attacks. Notably, a very condensed central area becoming difficult to play through. Moore and Windass sitting deep on the average positions, however they do tend to push the line forward with quicker breaks. Shot-wise, you'll see they take a large section of their shots within the box. In fact, they have the lowest percentage split for shots outside the area, so don't expect too many shots from distance, instead looking for key target men Moore and Windass in more optimum goal-scoring positions. Into their pass maps, you'll see they have some key passing lanes, comfortable with the ball around the back, utilising their back three, plus wing-backs. Some favouring on the right hand side within deeper locations, and some consistent medium to longer range passes. A slight lack of penetration through that middle however. This can be seen even more when we're only showing the successful passes. And again, when we look at the Middlesbrough game where they saw less of the ball, this becomes even clearer. Wrexham's touch heat map confirms a similar story, with more touches in deeper positions, preferring wider routes higher up the pitch and fewer touches within the opposition box. Average possession-wise, Wrexham sit 22nd and don't typically see a lot of the ball. Coventry have declined in terms of possession dominance in the last few games, however I'm still expecting them to be the more dominant players on the ball here. Accurate passing per match, Wrexham have a slightly higher than expected rate, so whilst they opt for more longer passes, they're fairly accurate with it considering. Looking at touches in the opposition box, Coventry remain well out in front, with Wrexham again down in 22nd place here. Whilst they're sat in 10th for accurate crosses into the box, in terms of their possession numbers, crossing remains one of their most favoured routes to goal. They're also right up there for accurate long balls per match, so we can expect a very direct team on Friday, a busy time for our Coventry back line. Defensively, they've not been at the mark so far and have the 4th highest XG conceded and sit 17th for goals conceded per match. That said, they've conceded less than 1 XG per match in the last 3 games, so potentially they've tightened it up at the back somewhat. Moving higher up the pitch, Wrexham sit 13th for expected goals, however 5th for goals per match, so they're certainly sticking them away and that should be a warning sign. They're 4th in big chances created, so they certainly have lots to offer going forward. So the question is, how can we expect Wrexham to play? Well, without the ball, they've set up in that 3-5-2 formation, and as they're allowed to settle, the wing-backs will drop deep, moving into a more of a 5-3-2 formation, becoming more condensed and difficult to break down. Moore and Windass will retain a more forward position, blocking passing lanes as opposed to pressing. An example here showcasing their press, and it's one that's not very active and can be easy to navigate. In this position, Wrexham have been largely solid defensively, requiring moments of magic from opposition teams to open them up. Where Wrexham have been caught is from overcommitting bodies forward and being punished on quick transitional play, with centre-backs having to play with width to challenge the opposition wingers. It's an area where they're certainly capable, however, against tricky, fast and strong wingers, they've been caught out. Moving out of position opens plenty of space for others to move in, losing their defensive shape and solidity. With the ball, they'll look to build from deeper positions where the press is less aggressive, favouring building down the right-hand side and with plenty of width through wing-back options. Wing-backs will certainly look to be getting up the pitch as much as possible. Kieffer in particular has the highest assists so far for them this season, so certainly a threat down that side. Wrexham have a high frequency of medium to long passing, looking to seek out Kieffer more in particular, who can cause a handful for opposition defences. His teammates will surround him, seeking the drop-downs or flick-ons to hurt the opposition teams on the break. Windass in particular drifts in between the centre-backs and the wing-backs to find space to run into unmarked. Their strongest outlet, however, comes from second phase deliveries and set pieces, so Coventry will need to be on high alert during the game. Coventry, meanwhile, have a few areas to address following that Watford game. In particular, the midfield. Our midfield certainly seemed to suffer during that game, often being walked through even against 10 men. Now, I thought Alan put in a really good shift and, of course, his goal. However, a few occasions we were caught out and bypassed with our press. Whilst I didn't think it was our best performance, it was against a very solid Watford team who had plenty of speed and power to hurt our defence. With the midfield being bypassed, it often led to the defence being put in positions that made them vulnerable, something that happened frequently last season. Lampard will certainly want to shore things up moving forward. That said, it all comes down to who he can bring into that midfield to offer that. I think it's likely Torp will be rested to ensure he's fit for the Sheffield United game. Allen may well retain his spot, although Eccles may be fit enough to come in and do a job. Lampard may be tempted to go back to that 3-4-3, however, in terms of breaking Wrexham down, we know they're best targeted down the wings, and if we can overload with skillful wing play and overlapping wing backs, we can really hurt them, with both Wright and Asante firing down the middle. I think Sakamoto and Mason Clark could have big games for this one. Wrexham are no pushovers, but they certainly don't hold the same midfield strength of that of Watford. I'd still expect our midfield to offer a stronger showing and be more dominant out versus Wrexham than we saw against Watford. I know we say it most weeks, but having Wright and Thomas Asante in those dangerous areas at the moment is an obvious choice to retain in the starting 11. So now into key players. We're going for Mason Clark and Sakamoto here on quickfire. Both their strong wing play and trickery is going to cause issues for Wrexham's back line. I'm also going for Thomas Asante. It's hard not to include him at the moment with his current goal scoring record. For Wrexham, we've gone for Kieffer more. Big and strong, always offering a threat. Windass certainly knows where the net is with 4 goals already this season. And finally, Kieffer topping Wrexham's assists this season, so certainly a threat from crosses into the box. Now into predictions. I think we'll likely see quite an even game possession-wise, and I think we'll see a stronger defensive performance than we did against Watford. That said, I do think that Wrexham will sniff out chances, in particular from longer balls and set pieces. They've only failed to score in 1 game so far this season, so Coventry will need to have their defence set and ready. Coventry will continue to be direct and forward in approach, and whilst I don't expect us to control the midfield, I expect we will be able to find routes through and on quick transitions find chances. The match plot model is predicting a 3-1 away win for Coventry. I think Wrexham certainly carry a goal threat, but in this instance will likely be outgunned by Coventry's flying attack. Thanks as always guys, you let me know what you think the score will be, and as always, catch you next time. Cheers!